Welcome to Revit 2019 Demo 40. For this lecture, we're going to go over creating custom shared parameters. As you create and begin to use families, there may be parameters that are listed that are awesome, and then there's other parameters that don't show up that you'd like to use. For example, you have a length and width parameter, but need one that is not listed. You can create a shared parameter that can be added to any family regardless of the category. The parameter is stored in an external file similar to a Keynotes file, ensuring consistency across families and projects. So we're going to start by making a window schedule with a few challenges. We will create a custom parameter called SHGC, uValue, and VT. They will be numbers. We will create a yes/no value for lead cert, and we will create a parameter for Oracle number or a client database number. We will then apply it to our window schedule. We will also apply it to our window family. So for this project, we're going to open up Revit 2019 Demo 39 to continue from, and we're going to get into adding parameters. So let's say there's a field you need that is not in the schedule. We will use the bold underline parameters above on page 321, and we'll explain kind of how to add these parameters. So we're going to look at our window schedule that we made previously, and we're going to notice that when we go into fields and edit these fields, that the available fields don't have a said parameter that we want. So what we can do is we can go into Manage, Shared Parameters, and we can create a shared parameters file. So we want to hit Create, and we're going to create a new folder inside of our Demos folder, and we're going to call it Shared Parameters. And the reason we're doing this is because it's a database, so we're going to call it Gallatin College Shared Parameters. And inside of our shared parameters folder, you'll notice that it creates a file path. And if you browse to that, it'll go right to where you saved that parameters text file. It is a text file, and therefore we're going to start building some elements in here. So what we want to do is we want to create and call it, or create groups and start to really assign what we're looking for. So the first one we're going to create is called Gallatin. Actually, we'll just call it window. We're just going to do window. You can set up as many groups as you want inside of here. The examples might be sustainable design parameters, electrical parameters, specialty equipment, parameters that are just company standards, annotation parameters. Each group can hold a bunch of your own custom parameters. So we're going to go ahead and call this group Windows, or window. I would prefer that it's called Windows just because it's associated to more than one window. And then we'll create a new parameter in here. So we'll create a new one. And the first one's going to be called Oracle number. And we're going to show the discipline. And we want to, the discipline currently is going to be set to common for now. We can take a text value from the type of parameter, so we want to associate that to text and hit OK. And now we have that parameter available. Now you've just created your first shared parameter. Now we want to create another one, so we're going to create another new one called capital SHGC, solar heat gain coefficient. And same thing, common, but this time we're going to use a number. So we're going to hit OK. Now I want to create another one called VT, and this one is going to be a common and number parameter. So hit OK. And then we're going to do another one called uValue. So we'll do u-value. We'll go ahead and do this one lowercase, less capitals. And then that one needs to be a number parameter as well. Notice I accidentally just created it as length, so I want to delete that. Are you sure you want to delete the selected shared parameters? Any families, tags, and schedules that include a deleted parameter will continue to function, but it will be impossible to use the parameter with anything new. So it's just a warning saying, hey, if you've used this before, it's going to wreak havoc. So we're going to say yes because we haven't used it before. We're going to create a new one, same thing, uValue. And then we want to associate this to a number. So this is going to be also a number. Now, what we want to do is create one more. So we're going to hit OK, new. And this one's going to be capitals, lead, cert. And we're going to set this one to a yes, no. So yes, no. Hit OK, and you'll notice that these parameters are built. So we've gone in And what we want to do is in the window parameter, we want to add a parameter that's a shared parameter. So we're going to hit OK. And we want to go into fields. And we want to add a new parameter that's a shared parameter. So we're going to choose shared parameter. We're going to select the parameter. We already have this file loaded because we just created it. And we're going to go through and select each one by one. So the first one we're going to do is Oracle because that's the first one we made. And we're going to hit OK. Notice that it's automatically laid out for us. We have it associated. This is a text-based parameter, so we'll group it under text. We can adjust these. I would prefer that we associate these to green building properties for this project. Generally, I like to put data under data, but it's just dependent on where you want to put it and where you want to see it. So we're going to put it under green building properties. So we're going to hit OK. And then we're going to do the same thing for the rest of them. So we're going to just continue through new shared parameter. Can be shared by multiple projects and families, exported to ODBC, and appear in schedules and tags. We'll explain a little bit more of this later, but we're going to continue down this list. The next one we created was SHGC. We want to group this under green building parameters. Hit OK. And we're slowly but surely building this list. So we're just going through and slowly but surely creating what we want. So same thing, green building parameters, OK. New, shared parameter, select. We did U value, so we'll do VT, hit OK. Green building parameters, properties. New one, shared parameter, lead cert, green building properties. And now we have all of them loaded. So from there, when you hit OK, you'll notice that the parameters have been assigned to the window schedule. But not only that, if I were to hit View 3D and Window Tile from my 3D view, WT, ZE on my 3D view, select this window and highlight in the model, it will highlight this window here. And if I edit the type of these, I'll notice under green building parameters of one of them, I should have the values that I'm looking for, and I don't. So what we need to do is we need to check and see where those went. So they're not associated here, and they're not here. However, they are associated here. So what we can go ahead and do, I think because they haven't been assigned yet, they're not showing up. So if we edit the type, we'll see the out of the box parameters. So when we edit this type, we can see the out of the box parameters. We don't have the green building properties in here. But if we edit the family, what we want to do is we want to associate the correct values. The problem is, even though we associated these values here, we can't assign anything yet because none of these values have been assigned to the proper window. So what we can do is we can select these and edit the family. So if I edit this family and I go into this window, I can then go in to the parameters. So I can manage shared parameters and I can load these parameters in. So what I want to do is I want to go into the family types. So create family types. This family types dialog will pop up. And we created all of those parameters. But what we want to do is we want to start adding the proper parameters. So you'll hit new parameter, shared parameter. We'll select which value we want. In this particular case, we want Oracle first. It's green building, grouped under green building properties. Hit OK. We'll do the same thing and just keep funneling through just like we did last time. So we pulled in Oracle. Now it's solar heat gain coefficient. And these ones are set as type. So the difference between type and instance choices means that the type value will be associated to a type catalog. Since this window is associated to a type catalog, we can do that. If we wanted something to be an instance based, it would basically only associate to the instance of the family. So that's important to know. I'm pulling them all in as type for right now. If I decide that I want to change this at any point in time, I would come in and delete that shared parameter and change it to the associated parameter that I want it to be. But notice it's grouping it under green building properties when I create these. So I'm pulling in each associated shared parameter as a type associated to green building properties. and then the same thing for shared parameters, select lead cert, yes or no. This one can be an instance-based parameter because it's a yes or no. Now the question is, would SHGC, uValue, VT, or Oracle number be instance or type? Those in this case are going to be set as type, but we want lead cert to be instance because each instance may be different, but it could also be type. It's up to you. It depends on whether or not it's yes or no. If one window is lead certified and another one's not, it's probably less likely that an instance based of the same value would be yes or no. It would be more associated to a type. For instance, if I had a 24 by 36 window, that one may be set as a lead certified under a specific model. But if I change that model number to something different that's also 24 by 36, that type of window may not be. So that tells me I should probably keep this as type. Now looking at, notice I made the mistake, I put it under other. So I have to delete that, create a new one, go to shared parameter, pull in lead cert, and associate that as type to green building properties. And now I have them all in. So the question becomes, what number is instance? Well, the Oracle number is probably going to be instance based, so I can change that here. Now when I hit apply OK, I can move these values up or down as well. Remember the order that we created these? So that's why I'm moving them up or down. When it's instance based, that tells me that I could have a different number associated to it. Now it's probably type based because I can't order different type numbers. A good example of type and instance would be the type mark versus mark value. If I have a type mark value associated to a window, that type mark value is going to show up across all windows on the correct tag. If it's mark based, it's going to place by instance, so it's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't have two of the same mark values because it'll give me an error. It'll still allow me to do it, it'll just flag an error. So understanding what is going to be instance-based versus type-based. I believe for all of this for right now, we're just going to leave them as type-based because if we need to edit them later, we can just edit them and change them as needed. So for now, we're going to go ahead and keep those. We added all the data, so that's associated. We're going to hit OK. We want to save as family, and we're going to save this as inside of our families folder. And I'm going to save it as fixed Gallatin. Make sure caps is off if you're leaving it on. Fixed window. Hit save. I'm going to load into project and close. And now that's a new window, which means that I should change this type to be the Gallatin fixed window. But if I go to a, what size was this, 36 by 48? Notice when I edit the type, all of those green building properties that we added are in here. So if I associate a number like 1, 2, 3 for Oracle number, hit apply, it's going to place that for each one because it's associated to a type value. And now it won't be for 36 by 72 because it's type based. So that helps create the catalog of the instances that are associated to these values. Meaning, if I highlight that window and I go into that value because I swapped them out, which was this one, let's see if it shows correctly. It showed the top ones. This is the one that I have selected, Gallatin fixed window. It's at the bottom of the list because it was the last one that I made. Notice that this one has the variables. That means all these windows do not have those correct values. So it's important to know that my window schedule is not going to allow me to punch these in unless I have the correct values. Now, I have this set up to not itemize every instance, and so I have 2 of these windows. And therefore, if I associate the values in here, same thing, 1, 2, 3, this change will be applied to all elements of type Gallatin fixed. Okay, I'm cool with that. And so now I'm building in the information to all of these within the project. SHGC, I can fill out these. I can say whether or not they're lead or not lead, and it will update on the fly from the schedule. So that's important to understand. Now we loaded that into the project. We swapped the window with the correct Gallatin window. We went back to the window schedule, and we could see that now these variables are in there. So it's a red flag to me that if a variable is not in here, it needs to have shared parameters associated to it. Now, aside from shared parameters, there are also project-based parameters. So if I wanted to, if this project was different than every other project that I worked on, I could come in here and I could go up to manage and I could go into project parameters. Now, project parameters function in a similar fashion. I could create a project parameter that are associated to the category of windows, and I could come in here and build out the same exact list of parameters that I just built, and it will associate to this project. The problem is, as I continue to build this library over time and create new projects, it becomes very cluttered. So the things that I'd prefer to associate to project parameters are project-specific based parameters. Most of my projects are going to have potentially a SHGC number or a U value, and then some may have the LEED certification. So those I really want to build into my shared library. This Oracle number, not all projects that I'm working on may have an Oracle number or a manufacturer number. They should have a manufacturing number, but not necessarily an Oracle number. So it depends on what you want to associate to that. So project parameters are just as powerful as shared parameters, but project specific, so they're not as robust. So if I save this project every time back over my template file, I'd always maintain those project parameters. But the second or the moment that I create a new project from scratch without this template file, those parameters are disconnected. So it's always best practice to stay away from the project parameters and just build them into your shared parameters library, because everything is being compiled to your shared parameters file. So if I go into my demos shared parameters, it's all being saved into this text file. So we created this Oracle number, this LEED cert, and it's associated to group. You could come in here and modify values in here, but I do not recommend it. It says this is a Revit shared parameter file. Do not edit manually. Just stay away from doing that. There are ways to go about it, but I wouldn't do it. I would stick to primarily running through Revit and referencing this file, because Revit's going to write it correctly back and forth. So you now understand and have learned how to create a custom parameter called a shared parameter. You learn that shared parameters can be put into schedules and families. You know the shared parameter file is a text file and can be updated with new groups and new parameters as time goes on. And the shared parameter file can be used on future projects too. That's very powerful. So what we're going to do for now is we're going to go ahead and File, Save As, Project, revit2019demo40, and let's just make sure that that's saved correctly, 40, and I will see you in the next lecture.